Hello everyone, welcome to my CSS tutorial on CSS layouts. Well, CSS layouts is an aspect I think we should tackle very well because it matters a lot. Well, CSS layout talks about how you lay out your website. So I'm making a couple of tutorials on CSS layouts, probably 4 or 5, I'm not really sure yet. Well, the first thing I would like us to talk about is the display layout. I won't misspell this display layout, display property rather. Well, then we talk about the width and the maximum width. Well, when I talk about the display is the most important thing in CSS layout. The reason is this: display has 2 elements, and then by default there are some elements that by default they have the display by default, either to be block or inline. What do I mean by in block? Block element. Example of block element is a block element. That one, block element we have div. Example of block element we have is we have div. Apart from div, we have h1 to h6 h1 to h6. We have paragraph, then div h1 to paragraph, we have number of them like that. Yeah, we have number of them like that. So that's block element. Block element, they take, when you're specifying a block element, they take up a new line and they stretch as much as possible to the right and to the left. So they take the whole width when you're specifying the block element. So another example, apart from block elements, by default the element can be an inline. What I mean by inline? They do not take up the whole width. They only take up the width specified or as necessary, and they don't take up new line. An example of this, that we have span. As an example. That span I still remember from now. So that's an example of inline and block elements. So when you are dealing with CSS layout, you can change your HTML elements. You can change them to be block or to be inline. You can override this. To override this, you can send your display. You can send display of these elements to be none. You can set display to be none, and this will override the element to be either block or inline elements. And then one thing you can do about this, you don't want to use display, you can use visibility. You can use this visibility and you can set the visibility to be hidden. Still work the same as display. Let me show you a brief example of this. Well, let's specify a div here. Let's specify a div, okay, and let's specify some paragraphs here. Sally is a good man. Let's put this here. Okay, let's see. Okay, you say Sally is a good man takes up a new line, and the other one, let's put John. John is a good man. We take up a new line as well. So this is an example of a block element. Let's specify border for this. border. Let's specify 1 pixel solid black. Okay. Let's see. You see, immediately we specify a border for them is they take up the whole width of the whole width and taking up a new line. This is an example of a block element. And what we can do, you can also set these elements. You can change the display. Let's say for the H1. Okay, H1 is also an example. Okay, I said H1 is an example of block element. Display of the block element. This is our H1. You can set the display to be none and it won't display anything. You can do that. You see, it is gone. While in our HTML we have H1 to be CSS Introduction, the display property width and maximum width, so it can be hidden as well. If you don't want to do that, you can equally set the visibility of this to hidden. Visibility, we can set it to hidden. Work the same way. Still not display. You see, but it will make sure the space is there. But it will reserve the space. That's the difference between the two. It reserve the space, but if you send the display to be none, it will take up. There won't be no space there. So that's the difference between this and that. Well, since this take up the whole element, take out the whole space. What there's a thing you can do. We can specify the width of this. How do you specify the width to make sure that this block element do not take up the whole space? They only take up the space that we specify. In order to do this, we specify let's specify the width for this. Let's specify the width to be, let them take up just 50% of the whole space. You see, so the space is been reduced to this. But the problem we have here is that there are some browsers that they do not take. When you have a content that is very much, and you specify a border for them, and they are div elements, they are block elements. There is the problem that can occur is that when it's going to display a scroll bar here, horizontal scroll bar, and don't really like that. So in order for this not to occur, it's better to set a maximum width most of the time. To set a maximum, like okay, specifying the maximum width of this one to be 500 pixels. It is advisable to set the maximum width rather to be 500 pixels or whatever you want to specify. So it's advisable to use maximum width in order to fit into some screen that they are not as big, or into some windows that are not large enough. So always use the maximum width. So that is that about talking about CSS layout, the display property, the width, and the maximum width. This tutorial might not be a great tutorial, but at least I think you've learned one or two things. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I'll see you in the next tutorial, still on CSS layout. Thank you.